Hello, folks. We are back with another episode of Generation Red, the kettle corn of Husker fan podcast, where we try to be sweet, but at times we do get a bit salty, and we are a proud member of the Herd at Sports Network. I am your host, Ken.
And I am the betrothed son and co-host, and I guess just host, Scott. Hi.
That's right. And we have a guest in the studio with us tonight. And but before we get to that, we got to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. First and foremost, you can save $10 on an annual subscription to Hail Varsity by going to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and put in the coupon code Generation Red, all one word, I believe, all caps, and that'll get you $10 off of your subscription. Doesn't get any better than that. If you ask me, just the yearly magazine alone is worth it. And our guest has a big hand in that yearly magazine this year. But before we get to him, we're almost there, I promise. Nebraska Podcast Awards, first annual, are August 19th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. at Nebraska Brewing Company in La Vista, Nebraska. Whew, I said Nebraska 3 times in the same sentence. I think I should get an award for that. Voting is live now and it ends in 7 days. So to vote now, click on the link in the description of this video and you should be able to do that, which of course I forgot to put the link in the description of the video. So you have to wait until after the show posts, folks. It'll be there. Any of you listening to the audio podcast in a couple of days, you should be able to click the link that's down in the show notes there as well. And you'll be able to vote for us on those 3 categories, the video visuals, comedy, and the Kool-Aid Aholics Anonymous. If anything, give us the Kool-Aid Award just to piss off Red Cats Rob. That would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool.
And
he would take that one personally.
Yes, he would. Absolutely, he would. And I would enjoy personally gigging him about it every single time I got a chance. Free tickets to attend the awards show might still be available. Just Google Nebraska Podcast Awards and click on the Eventbrite link. Without much further ado, we are joined by Eric Francis, 30-year veteran of photographing Husker sports and covering them pretty extensively, and especially in the last few years with Hail Varsity. I forgot to write down a bunch of the stuff off of your Twitter so that I could introduce you properly, Eric. I apologize for that. But, dude, welcome. And we've been hanging out and talking on StreamYard for a little while. It's been a lot of fun, and I am really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
So just dive right into it. What is it that got you into photography? When did you first discover that you liked to take pictures?
So a little bit in high school, but mostly when I graduated high school, I was still just going to college. I was going to teach something. I didn't really care what, and coach football. That's all I wanted to do. And that was my plan. And then that summer, and I'd always kind of, played around with my mom's camera and things. But it was nothing more than just like a passing hobby. And then that summer after my freshman year, I came back and spent a lot of time hanging out with a good friend of mine that I went to high school with, and he was really getting into photography. And honestly, it looked like a lot of fun, and all the gear was really cool. Right, I'm kind of a gadget guy, right? So, and photography was a bunch of gadgets. And I just loved I loved all that part of it. And it was fun. And he was starting to get into the photojournalism thing. And that really looked like a lot of fun. Meeting people, telling stories, going to all these cool events, not just sports, but, covering politics and news and spot news and all kinds of things. And it was a lot of fun. And so I really got interested in that. And about the same time that after my sophomore year, just sophomore, junior, and junior year of playing football and sitting in my dorm room with ice packs on both knees 3 or 4 times a week, I just had a moment of, what are you doing? I mean, as much as you love this game, you're done after college. There's not like you're not playing for the pros here. So I gave up my senior year and picked up the camera full time and kind of went all in with that and moved back to Omaha. Worked at the UNO student newspaper for several years, and then got some jobs and around here covering sports is a lot of that job. Freelancing for the World Herald and the Associated Press, a lot of it was shooting sports, and over time I just kind of started to realize that I'm not half bad at it, and just kind of went with it.
Did you have like this might be a kind of a dig into your core memories here a little bit, but did you ever have like a moment when you were like in the initial stages of kind of exploring around with the photography thing with different cameras, and you said you're a gearhead and all that stuff, but did you have like a moment where you got a gallery of just awesome photos and you're looking at them at, maybe it's an event that really intrigued you or something, and you just kind of sit there in your room or in your studio or wherever you're at, and you're just looking at these photos and you go, I really want to do this? Did you have that moment? Is it still like, do you have that maybe ingrained in your memory at one point?
There wasn't like a singular light bulb moment like what you're going after. There wasn't a moment when it just, for me, it just kind of evolved. In that there was more sports, and I started to get pretty decent at it. I suppose the closest thing I'd come to, learning photography is just like anything else. It's just it's a skill set that you dive into and you give yourself over to if you really enjoy it. But I covered the College World Series for 25 plus years for the Associated Press mostly. And I started to realize some things through that process is when I started to realize some things about myself. And I had kind of what I called a Zen moment, baking in the sun out at Rosenblatt, or maybe, it was probably still at Rosenblatt, where I realized that I stopped, because the early part of the career was trying to learn it and, learning from your mistakes and chasing that last mistake you made. And I had kind of a Zen moment. It was kind of a light bulb moment where I realized to just if I missed a photo, because you're going to miss them all the time, right? Even the best shooters in the world miss stuff all the time. And I had the Zen moment where I realized to just let that go and stop chasing the last mistake I made and keep looking for the next one, and then I start to realize that, man, that's kind of a metaphor for life as well, right?
Yeah, it is.
True.
Stop chasing that last mistake, learn from it, and start looking for the next one. Otherwise, you're going to miss the next one too.
Yeah.
Because you're still being haunted by the last mistake you made or the last thing you missed. And then once I made that, it was almost like a light bulb transition. Once I made that mental shift, that's when my work really took off. Really, really took off. And I started to realize also through doing College World Series and some of the Nebraska football things that I kind of get better the more the game matters. Like early in the weeks of the covering College World Series games, I wasn't fully engaged and I might miss something and who the hell cares? But as the week would go along and games started to matter more and more and more, I started to miss less and less and less, right? In fact, one of my favorite stories from that time was actually my the staff photographer partner at the magazine, John Peterson, used to work the College World Series for other organizations back then. And one day he was sitting behind me and I don't even remember what it was. Something happened. Boom, boom, boom. We make the picture and I'm looking at it at the back of the camera. And because he's over my shoulder, he can see my camera. And I just hear from the back, he says something to the effect of, "God damn, do you miss anything?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually miss a lot. The problem is now when I miss something, I don't care."
You're in the moment.
Right. And
Moment
the
to moment.
more the moment matters, the more you get dialed into, the more I seem to get dialed into it. I don't know if that's a residual of being an athlete for all those years or what it is, but the more it matters, the more I'm focused in. And ironically, COVID put a huge spotlight on that for me, because now all of a sudden we were shooting sports in empty arenas, in empty Memorial Stadium. This is the first time I'd ever shot a football game at Memorial Stadium when there was virtually nobody there.
It's first for everybody.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 40, 50 yards away and I can hear the center making his calls.
Wow.
Right. It's that quiet in there.
Wow.
Oh man.
And I found myself struggling.
Oh yeah.
For half of that season to focus and to do my job. And I realized that my entire career, I had to learn to focus through the energy of 90,000 people. Because when you're down on that field, all that energy is focused on that field. So you can't help but absorb it and feel it and have that. And I learned throughout my career to focus through that, just like the athletes do. And then all of a sudden it was gone. And I had nothing to focus through. So it felt a little more than a little disconcerting for a while.
I have like another kind of off the cuff, off the outline question, just because I find photography very intriguing. It's always something that, even with just my iPhone, I don't have any fancy cameras or anything. I just usually rely on my phone and
iPhones do a
whatnot.
great job.
Oh, they do. They do. I love taking good photos, just because they capture a good moment. And I notice whenever I'm taking a good photo and I look at it, I'm like, that's a damn good photo. When I reflect back on it, I realize that a lot of it's mostly just intuition, like that I know what looks good in my mind's eye. So then I take it with a camera and hopefully it reflects what I see in my mind.
Yeah.
With you being a sports photographer, obviously there's a lot of focal points. The guy who has the ball is usually where you're pointing the camera. But do you still have moments where it's like you're just relying purely on your intuition of where to aim your camera at the right time to get the right moment?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, it's a little bit of intuition. It's a little bit of knowing the coaches, knowing the players, knowing what they're likely to do. And you can kind of increase your odds if you have an idea of what they're likely to do, just like what a defensive coordinator would be thinking, trying to anticipate what they're going to do. And you can put yourself in positions to do that. There is a lot of instinctual stuff that happens. Like that shot from Rutgers that I think is in the slideshow we'll touch on later. Yeah. That was purely an instinctual moment. I don't even think I got the camera up to my eye in that moment. It was purely instinctual. But that's, those are the kind of things that happen after 40 years of refining your craft. And when you've got the craftsmanship part of it on point, then you can rely on those instinctual moments when they happen and have success there.
Have you always kind of focused in or covered the Huskers in some form or fashion over your career? Was it just happenstance because you were in the Nebraska area that you've worked at, or was there an official? You're probably an independent contractor or freelancer for the most part. So it's just kind of like, as people say, hey, we need you to come cover this. Is that
more or less? Yeah. And it's been for different organizations over the years, but pretty much.
How about some highlights? Do you? I know we're going to go through some shots. We've got a gallery full of stuff that you've done since you've been at part of Hale Varsity. But are there some highlights, some shots that you remember back in the day? Say during I don't know, the glory years.
Yeah, I mean the
glad.
Fiesta Bowl had a lot of good moments.
Was that
You
your
know?
picture of Frazier running into the end zone on the front of Sports Illustrated?
No, that
Oh,
was
dang. I was hoping it would.
God, I'm trying to remember who was shooting that game. I think SI had 2 guys there for that game.
Hmm.
I don't remember if that was Strohmeyer's picture. I don't remember who that was at the moment. But no, he ran right by me.
Hmm.
And then as he was running into the end zone to make that picture, somebody stepped out in front of me.
Oh,
And
wow.
I totally got blocked.
Bummer.
Oh, man.
Okay, so I have another random question, and it's something that I just like. Whenever I think of any industry or any craft or anything, I always want to know the background, like what's going on in the background, or what absurd things do you get that not many people are ever going to know about because they just don't think about those things. But do you have like any vivid memories of like, okay, they're doing all this over there, but I'm just going to aim my camera over here and take a picture of somebody doing something stupid or something really embarrassing or something that if this photo were to get out, the person I just took the picture of would not be a fan of me. Have you ever gotten those moments before?
Oh, sure. They've been playing. I mean, the one from last year, I'm sure a couple of pictures I've made of Scott this last year probably wouldn't endear him to me a whole lot because we all know what the writing on the wall was. So I spent a considerable amount of time kind of stalking him. And not like right on top of him. I mean, I've got my big
Right.
sports lens, so I'm like, 30 yards away, but specifically keeping an eye on him for the right moment because I knew we were going to need it at some point. But yeah, no, I mean, there's all kinds of the fans and things like that. It comes to mind a picture I made of the College World Series years ago of a girl jumped on the field and ran across the field and grabbed like the shortstop's butt as she ran by.
You got a picture of that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it keeps popping up every year. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be part of my legacy. 25 years of covering the College World Series, and that's the picture everybody remembers.
I don't hang it up on your wall.
Well, if you covered it, I went to my very first College World Series game in 1994. It was right after Nebraska wins the national championship. So it was the 2 games I saw it was that first Saturday of the weekend. It was Arizona State was playing, I believe, Miami, and then Oklahoma was playing somebody at night. So Oklahoma and Auburn, I think, were playing at night. So the Arizona State and Miami game, we're sitting out in left field left field. We're sitting out in left field. And somebody from Miami hits a line drive to the outfielder in left field, and he catches the thing probably 20 yards in front of the fence and throws a frozen rope to home to get the guy tagging out at third. And I was like, we're out there, we're just doing this number,
Right.
As he's turning back around to walk and he fires the finger guns up into the crowd, It was kind of like, man, I wish I had a camera. This was kind of a cool moment.
Nice.
But,
I was probably there for that.
Yeah, it was a great play. And then I think there was like 8 home runs or something in the nightcap, which that was what I loved about Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt was wonderful because 9 times out of 10, the wind's blowing out.
Sure, because they built it facing in the correct direction.
Yeah, they didn't do what they did at TD Ameritrade. But
I wasn't going to say
or
that.
Charles Schwab or whatever the blazes they call it now. But
right.
I've been to a few College World Series at Rosenblatt. I have not been to one at the new place yet because to me it's way more corporate than it used to be. But
it's just like all the other ones. Every other NCAA championship is exactly the same. It's become this big event where it's almost more about the things outside the stadium as it is about things inside the stadium.
Yeah, more about the bigness of the event as opposed to the spectacle you're actually seeing on the field.
Right.
Or so
Selling tens of thousands of shots at a bar.
yeah,
Jello
kidding.
shots.
No kidding. How did you end up landing at a Hale Varsity? How did that come about?
Well, for years, the owner of Hale Varsity at the time, we had been talking for several years about wanting to bring me over, but he had to get subscriptions up and have the cash flow to be able to afford bringing me over. And I told him, said, dude, just make enough so that I don't lose money by giving up one client to come over there, and I'm good. And finally, we got the numbers close enough that I was ready to make the jump, because after years of doing the Associated Press and Getty Images, and it had gotten really kind of formulaic for me and a little stale. And the idea of coming over to Hale Varsity and having almost complete creative control and the philosophy of wanting to do things different, show our readers things that they don't normally see, the things they don't expect to see in a way they don't normally see them. That was really intriguing to me, and something I was ready to do. So
yeah, I mean, we'll get to the photo gallery here in just a second, because what you're saying right now is exactly reflected in your photographs. At least the ones I picked anyway were the ones that you've talked about before on previous shows. I know that, but they're just moments. They're the ability to grab something in a moment of time, and it reflects a story. It's not just a person standing around catching a football. It's just, you capture an emotion with what you do. And it's obviously, Hale Varsity has really set you free to be able to do that. And they use a lot of those images. I know I just recently became a subscriber. I think it was within the last year. And just being able to
you've missed a lot of good stuff then.
I know. I know. But it was, and just looking through the photos. I mean, sometimes I don't even read the stories. I just want to thumb through it real quick just to see all the different photos.
See, that's the best compliment ever.
They're amazing. And then, of course, I go back and read the stories, because, nobody buys a picture magazine just for the photos when they were a kid, did they?
I did. I have shelves full of books back there that have very few words in them.
Yeah, there you go. Oh,
Speaking my kind of language.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me see if I can get this darn slideshow to work. Oh, that's right. I exited out by accident before we went live.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to add it.
So,
oops.
Where's my cursor? Well, you guys talk amongst yourselves while I try to figure out why my mouse doesn't want to work.
Okay. Yeah. I still am a picture guy. I don't read books all that often. I'm too ADHD for it. And it's honestly a skill that has to be acquired. And I am honestly too lazy to acquire that skill in my late 20s, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get bored. But every time I look at like the Hale Varsity magazine or just Sports Illustrated or anything like that, yeah, I agree with my dad. Like the thing that I always do first is I look and try and find my favorite image, and then I always lock in on the story that the image is related to first. That's how I thumb through magazines and news articles. I'm just looking for the image that captures my eye. So, yeah,
same here.
It's definitely a career that I can appreciate. The one that
you were talking about
your life.
Yeah, you were talking about the cell phone thing earlier, and one thing that came to mind was there's an old adage that goes around, which is basically the best camera is the one that's in your hand, the one that you have on you, the one that you have with you. And for most people these days, that's now the cell phone, right? Most people don't carry cameras around anymore.
No.
And so I've toyed around with the idea, and maybe it'll happen someday, that I've always wanted to teach a photography class with just cell phones. Because even my professional cameras are so good at handling a lot of the technical aspects that it frees me up to be more creative. And like in the old days, you really had to understand shutter speed, aperture, film ISO, and there was no screen to look at on the back. You had to know in your head how that photo is going to look when you put those numbers on the camera. Well, now all of that stuff has gone away, and the cameras have gotten so good at handling all the technical aspects that really, I could take my pro cameras and put them in all the automatic modes and hand them to you. And with very little input, you could make a decent action photo because the cameras have the ability to handle most of those technical things for you. So that's what with the cell phone thing, cell phones the same way. Cell phones do great. And so it would free us up to focus on the important things: light, composition, moment, backgrounds, all of that kind of stuff, rather than worrying about all the technical things. Let's just focus on the things that make a nice picture.
I would honestly be curious about that, because like I said, I run mostly off of my intuition, and obviously I have a biased lens of view. So it's like
everybody does
at my photos, I'm like, this is a damn good photo, but I don't know why it makes it a good photo. I mean, I have my hunches about, like, okay, there's depth of field, there's intriguing contrasting backgrounds, and it almost adds an emphasis on the thing that I'm trying to focus on. But I just know that intuitively, I don't know it explicitly. And so getting those kinds of classes,
but the
really
explicitly cool. That stuff you could learn. I mean, I could teach you that stuff.
And that's exactly
the basic composition things, and I harp on this a lot on some of my own channels, is doing things with intention, right? Not that it's always gonna, because especially with shooting sports, it's inherently an unpredictable event, but you can make choices and do things with intention to increase your odds of getting what you want. And outside of sports, where you have more control, you can absolutely do things with complete intention and get exactly what you want. But you have to be a little intentional about it.
Fascinating.
Well, I actually got the slideshow to work.
It looked like it.
I had to plug my mouse in because it charges via USB-C, so I unplugged one of the cameras over here I'm not using and used USB-C cord to get the mouse to work.
Yeah, I saw you struggling. You were typing stuff in the notes.
Camera off. Even my keyboard wouldn't let me turn my camera off. So none of the hotkeys right now are working in StreamYard. So it's going to be one of those nights. I think this one does, though. Nope, it doesn't. I can't even turn on the stream with my Stream Deck anyway.
Gonna have to do it the old school way.
Yep, like that. Use the old mouse. The mouse is working. So there we go. That's the first picture I picked. Obviously from this last season. Do you remember where were you set up to take this? It looks like
I kind of like the story on this one too, because I was shooting the game, and usually you can I start to, and sometimes, I shouldn't say not all the times, but on this particular night, I had started to work myself, because I'm always moving around the field. And so I had started to work myself down the first base line to get myself closer to the exit. I was ready to go. And it's, and then all of a sudden, as I was working my way down the line, all of a sudden that game starts to slip away. I'm like, no way, they're not gonna. Oh crap, they're gonna. And so I was down the first base line, down by the field, and so it just happened. This one just happened to line up that way. I mean, I did see ahead of time that, if Creighton pulls this off, they're going to explode from the dugout and they're going to run right at me. And it just happened to line up where, pitcher's walking off and the dugout's exploding behind that. We had an interesting discussion at the magazine over this one or a couple other images that they all had different qualities, one over the other. But this one seemed to always just keep coming back to the front for that sake of that discussion.
Yeah, I love the way the depth of field looks on it. The crowd is obviously way blurred out, but you can see the joy on the Creighton players' faces, but it's not quite as distinct as the
focus is on the focus on the pitcher, because we work for
walk-off, right?
And we work for a Nebraska magazine, so I'm always looking at the red and white to be a focus of the picture usually.
I mean, you can even see just in the subtle top left corner, you can see the arms crossed, fans sitting in their seats. Like, it's the anticipatory feeling of defeat that every Husker fan is familiar with, unless you're a fan of Husker volleyball, then that's less often. But yeah, you can just see arms crossed. They're just like, wow. So if you look for those little details, it's like you can see everything. You can see the synchronization of the pitcher and the fans. It's just so just.
Well, and then I know there's a pretty good story. Oh, of course it doesn't want to move the slide up. There we go. Yeah, we're gonna have to go old fashioned here. So there's the one with Lexi Rodriguez helping Kenzie Nuck. Was that the night that Kenzie got injured, or was that after she had been injured? I don't remember.
Yeah, now I'm not 100% certain. Because she got hurt early in that match.
Okay.
I think this was the night.
Okay.
But again, I'm just walking off into the tunnel to go back to our workroom to start working up photos, and something made me just like turn around for a second, and I see them coming at me. This is one of those instinctual things you were talking about earlier. And I literally, it happened so quick. I just grabbed a camera, pulled it up, fired off a few frames, and there it was. And then, lo and behold, as the rest of the season, transpires, we've realized that was losing Kenzie was
huge.
a big impact to the team.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty pivotal moment.
No doubt about it. Let's see here. There we go.
Yeah.
Now that's I love watching this kid play, and he obviously absolutely loves to play, right?
Right.
I mean, the joy that he exhibits in this is just beautiful. Absolutely. It's such great. Again, you probably were in the moment, or maybe were you set up waiting to see this, or was he literally pointing at you?
No, he wasn't literally pointing at me. I think he was just making the finger guns because he was shooting lights out as usual.
Yeah. So I apologize first and foremost to the folks who are listening to the podcast after the fact.
Oh,
yes. Get to see these photographs. I apologize.
Well, they're going to have to go back and find it on
go to YouTube,
on YouTube.
Subscribe to Generation Red on YouTube. Shameless plug. And fast forward to about 30 minutes, and you'll be able to see these photos that we're talking about. They're worth going to YouTube and checking out. So moving on. This is a photo that I picked not because it describes anything particularly dramatic, this is because Scott and I were sitting with our wives about 2 sections over to the right and about 4 rows down for this Georgia Southern game. So this was more of a
So you recognize the view.
I recognize the view. I love that is my favorite place in the whole stadium to sit, is up anywhere.
It's
And
kind of my preferred go-to sunset spot now these
Yep.
days.
It's so beautiful up there.
Yeah, I mean it is.
You can pee whenever you want. You can eat whenever you want.
and there's decent bathrooms up there. That's beautiful.
Yeah, you're just a mile and a half away from the field.
Yeah, that's all. But you can see everything. That's the thing. You can see the holes open up. You can see the passes in the air. You can see it all.
True.
And in some ways, I think it's a better perspective on what's really going on the field up there than it is, say, in the end zones.
Yeah, I think I gave up almost the entire second quarter to make this picture last year. But it's worth it, and it you know, it was
perfect.
It was Georgia Southern. I mean, they're gonna win that game. At least that was my, obvious thinking at the time, and they did. But so I figured it was worth to go up there and make, because we don't get the evening game at sunset with a nice sunset. Everything seemed to be lining up that night, and so I told John, I said, I'm gonna go, hang out in literally behind the last seats in the stadium.
Yeah.
To see if I can make a picture worth looking at. So
you did that. It's so beautiful up there. I especially, like you said, with the sunset going down behind West Stadium, just doesn't get much prettier. Now, if you're up there in the middle of the afternoon when the sun's starting to come down the western sky and beating directly in your face, it's not exactly.
Also, you won't find me going up there to make a picture in, say November.
No, you don't have a lens hood big enough. Oh yeah, November, no doubt.
Blistering cold.
Of course, this is from that game too, and I know you've talked about this picture, but I remember the first time I saw it as well, and then heard you talk about it. I was like, yeah, that would have been what I would have thought immediately when I saw the picture was, yep, I think he knew it was over.
Yeah, that was exactly my take from. And like I said, I'd been low-key stalking him from yards away, and I'm not the only photographer who was, I can tell you that. But, I was just always one eye on the action on the field, one eye towards where's Scott, what's he doing? And when I saw this go through the camera and I saw it in the moment, I thought, okay, that's a cover candidate when the time comes, because we all knew it was coming by this point. And it wound up making the cut for the cover, but it just kind of says everything to me. It's like that was the moment he realized it's over.
Yeah, at
least that's what it feels like.
That resigned look on his face, like, I'm not pulling this out. It's not happening tonight. His players are standing quite a ways away from him. He looks kind of like a man out on an island, really. So next slide, if I can make it work. There we go. There's the one you were talking about earlier. The one where you just threw your camera up and hopefully you got it framed, even though you didn't quite get it up to your eye, right? That's there at Rutgers.
Right. And that was that, late in the game, right after a turnover. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, most offensive coordinators after a turnover within shot of the end zone, pretty good chance they're going to take a shot, because it's a good time to get to capitalize on momentum and try to take a kill shot. So, I had positioned myself in a place where, if it comes this way, I'll be in exactly the right spot. And then I see Trey line up on that side of the field. Okay, it's looking better for me. And and I see Casey just rear back and let the ball go. And I immediately took my eye out of the camera to find Trey, because it had to be Trey streaking down and lo and behold, he was running right at me. And I just grabbed the little camera around my neck and just kind of brought it up and kind of shooting from the hip, Old West style. And that's where those, the skill set combined with some instincts and, 30 years of doing it the wrong way.
Right.
Teach you how to do it the right way.
So were you able to get the living daylights out of his way by the time
I got Trey slid right to the left of me, and it was the Rutgers guy that actually kind of caught a little glancing blow. He hit it. I took his knee right in my right thigh.
Oh,
yeah. When I rolled out of bed the next day,
limping a little.
Trying to get through the airports the next day was a little bit of a chore.
Oh, I
It
imagine.
was worth getting the shot, though. Worth getting the shot.
Good
yeah,
shot.
because at the time, we didn't know what we didn't know yet. I thought, if Coach gets this thing turned around, and this moment could have been the turning point of the season. Now it didn't play out that way, but in the moment, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right? If he gets this turned around, this is going to be the picture of the year, because it would have been the moment that it all flipped.
Yeah.
And it almost did. Not quite, but
you take a look at the games. I threw that question there at the bottom. Without Trey Palmer, what would the Nebraska record in 2022 look like? He scored both touchdowns in the Wisconsin game, and if it weren't for a defense that couldn't figure out how to stop anybody in the fourth quarter because they were wore out.
I know. The what if game is hard to play because I could counter and say, how many more wins would Nebraska had without Scott Frost?
Yeah.
I think that's worth at least two.
It's worth
for sure.
The concept for certain. At
two
least
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So the what if game is really, really hard because nothing happens in a vacuum.
Nope.
No.
Wife and I were at this game for Illinois when we didn't know what Casey got hurt. She couldn't tell. He just hurt his hand. He didn't limp.
Well, when this was at the moment, because I was in the other end zone, and this happened like 80 yards away, and I just saw him sitting there, and I just kept my lens on him. And then when he looked down at his arm like that, I was, oh shit.
Yeah.
That's not what we needed.
That's kind of what we set up in our seats when Chuba ran on the field. It was like, oh no.
Oh God.
So, but yeah, to capture that just at that moment, I mean, poor Casey, he could not catch a break. And I threw this one in for also selfish reasons, not only because Ty got a sack against the Golden Flecktones, but because I actually met him in Arizona at the gun range out there, Rio Salado gun range. Went out there for Christmas, and I think it was the 26th or 27th we went shooting, and sure enough, we saw some Nebraska gear down the way, and so my son-in-law was like, you might want to go talk to him. One of the guys looks big enough to be a player, and I looked, and I'm like, son of a gun, that's Ty Robinson. So I walked over, and I was that guy. Hey,
Right.
dude, I have a podcast with my son. Can I take a picture with you so he's not pissed that I didn't? Still haven't convinced him to come on the show yet, but maybe one of these days. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I love that bokeh behind this picture. It's just that blurry. I just love depth of field. And that's one of those that
or the lack thereof.
Yeah, the framing of Ty, and then just nothing but a blur, because I'm sure that's what it feels like to them playing. It's basically all a blur, so you're kind of capturing the moment for them as well. So and there you go. The traitor himself.
Oh, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
He had a team high 8 solo tackles that day as a true freshman against that offense. So, and that running back too, to just great picture. It still hurts to look at.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people in the world probably that gets excited when I'm working and it snows.
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's a philosophy that goes around, and I kind of subscribe to it, is the worst weather makes the best pictures. Now it's horrible to work in. This was not just snow, but it was kind of wet. It was kind of snow. It was kind of rain. It was just wet and cold and miserable. It was no fun working this game last year in Michigan.
Mm.
But as long as it was snowing, I was excited.
Oh, sure.
Because
Get some good photos.
That's the only way you get images like this. And without the snow, it's just another football picture.
Just adds another
Right.
element to it. No pun intended.
And then that game, we were there. Coldest game I think I can remember being at, as far as
It was
being
so
miserable.
cold.
Yeah, Garrett was, we've talked about this photo a couple times. I really, Garrett was kind of my barometer after every game, because we go over there and we stand by the tunnel as the players exit and try and make pictures that reflect the outcome of the game. And Garrett was always kind of my barometer, because I always felt like, all the way back to our yearbook cover shoot from last year that he was on, and I got to spend some time with him and get to know him a little bit. It just always felt like he was taking probably a little more on his shoulders than was due.
Right.
And I think it affected his play a little bit, because he was trying to do everything instead of just his job. But also, he's a local boy. He's one of the few people on the team that were playing not at Nebraska, but for Nebraska.
Yeah.
And at this time, none of us knew, and I think even he wasn't sure whether he was going to try to go pro or come back for another year. And so I was following him off the field, and then he just, as he walked by me, and I turned around and followed him with my camera, he just turned around, and you can just see on his face that in the moment he was thinking, this might be my last time. So he was deliberately, he took his time. This moment lasted, a good 10, 12, 15 seconds. He was taking its time to soak in the moment. And
kind of like Adrian did the year before at Wisconsin, as he was walking off the field there. Yeah.
Right. And then someone else pointed out the juxtaposition with Casey there, who, he's a great guy, but for lack of a better term, he was a mercenary last year, right? He's not from Nebraska. He wasn't playing for Nebraska. He was playing at Nebraska. And, he had a much different, and he had taken part in senior day, so he wasn't sure yet. But he had a much different reaction to that moment walking off the field. And that's why you recruit local guys.
Absolutely. That's why I'm pretty excited about this new coaching staff, who's basically almost got no ties here at all, other than one guy with the last name, right? Riola.
Right.
But other than that, and they're hardcore going local. So I'm really excited. We're not there yet. We've got a few more photos I'd like to go through. These are more nerding out on photography for me. There's a story, I'm sure, behind all of them, but I have to ask, how the filth did you get this camera angle?
Well, this is one of those things from, years of covering Creighton, also when I was, doing the Associated Press and Getty Images and stuff. Down at, what is it now? The CHI Health Center.
Okay.
The catwalks up top, we have access to.
Oh, okay.
And so knowing that the position of one of the catwalks is literally right over the top of this hoop. And it was the first half, and that was the direction Nebraska was going. Or wait a minute, Creighton was going that way. But anyways, I knew that this is the only time this year I'm going to have this opportunity. And I literally spent an entire half of basketball with my lens, leaning over with my lens hanging over the railing up there to get these photos, because it was the only opportunity we were going to have.
I assume you had the camera around your neck so that.
Well, I got it strapped around my arm and around my neck, and yeah, it's not. There's no risk of anything falling. But
good, because I know I can imagine what that lens costs that you're getting that shot with. So, I've got little kit lenses, and I've bought like a 50 millimeter pancake and a 250 millimeter pancakes, and or primes, excuse me, not a pancake, but then a 16 millimeter prime, and those were hard to part with a few $100 for. I can't imagine what it costs to get
a
a
little
hold
bit
of
more
that really can grab color and pictures
and
like that.
And you wouldn't want to be that guy who on live television drops, multi-$1,000 camera on a basketball player.
Well, not only that, I mean, we go so far as to take lens hoods off,
Sure.
like you take your basketball cap off.
Mm.
You just don't want to be that guy.
No.
Yep.
Right. And in amongst other photographers, the way I always put it is, I don't want to be the guy that takes this opportunity away from everybody else.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
always shooting with the other guy in mind too. This picture, I'm guessing first base.
Yeah.
How the blazes did you get the angle? Where were you standing, sitting? Were you on the ground? How did you get
just it? No, I was in the little photo well right by the dugout, and I don't know. I saw it through my through the lens, and one of the things I love about baseball is it's the only sport that's intentionally played on dirt.
Yes.
Barring all the AstroTurf that's coming up now, but it's the only sport that is intentionally played on dirt. And I like that. I just like the dirt and you start off with clean white uniforms, and by the end of the game, you're just covered in. I like that about baseball. So these kind of things catch my eye.
What lens I assume you use more than one?
This would have been my 400, probably with the teleconverter on it.
Okay, teleconverter,
so
meaning
it increased the magnification, so it took my 400, made it like a 600. And then on top of it, I probably cropped it more.
Okay.
In the computer.
Okay. 4K. I'm assuming you're taking that resolution at.
Well, we don't. That's a video term, but
okay.
Yeah, we still photographers talk in megapixels, but
megapixels. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure half of the art of photography these days is what you do with it in the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, getting the editing,
production, literally
pushing the button is just, and getting it in the camera is just half. You've only done half of your job.
Yep.
Exactly. It's like doing this, getting the video out there live streamed. That's half the battle. The rest of the battle is actually post-producing at the end, separating it out into segments so that people can watch whatever part of the show they want, or setting up the audio show to where all of us sound at the same level, audio and all that good stuff, and then putting it out there on the podcast app. So yeah, I hear you, but I can't imagine. I've done a little photo editing when I've taken some pictures with the camera that I'm using for my webcam today, and it's a lot of doggone work, and I'm terrible at it. But eventually I'd like to be able to do some stuff like that. It would be kind of cool. So let's see here. Next, how did you do this? Is this straight up shutter speed?
Shutter speed, yeah. I probably doing how I like to do it. I probably dropped my shutter speed down to around a 15th of a second.
Okay.
And I probably shot 99.9% garbage for the time that I was experimenting with this panning process to get one or two images I was happy with.
It's really cool. I mean, it just kind of shows both speed and probably a little, you can see just enough definition in his arms to know that he's a
The little
strong kid.
frantic.
Really cool.
I always like to, one of the things that I shoot for is to, and there's debates in the photo community of you should do this, you should do that. You shouldn't do something because it makes the viewer uncomfortable. My counterpoint to that is it should be uncomfortable, because everything about what these athletes are doing is uncomfortable.
Sure.
Right? The environment's uncomfortable. The stress is uncomfortable. The opponent is uncomfortable. Getting hit or doing it's all uncomfortable. Why shouldn't the photo also be uncomfortable to look at? If it imparts a little bit of the feeling of what it might be like, then I consider it a win.
Yeah, it's an expression of art. It's really, I agree with that entirely. That was the first thing that I thought of when I saw this photo. Was it's capturing the gristle of the moment. Like because I mean, when the football instinct it's an instinct. Everything else is a blur. And so their experience is not high definition. So why not have a photo that is also capturing the almost low resolution experience that they're having?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Well put. I think these next few are actually black and white.
No, my career started with black and white film. So if you pour through my Instagrams, you're going to see a lot of black and white.
I did. I went through your Instagram.
Because I love black
and white. A lot of cool stuff for sure. This one struck me just from the sake of these young fans are enjoying cheering. Do we want to let them in on the joke? Men's basketball is really hard to watch a lot of the time.
Not all the time. Maybe
I know.
Could be.
There's
Keisei just drained one from half court.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I just remember it's just another one of those things. I turned around, saw it, went, oh, and took a couple frames and then turned back to the game and pouring through it post edit. Yeah, it's kind of cute. I kind of like it. There's nothing super special about it, but sometimes there's an intangible,
capturing a moment that they truly, truly enjoyed. And just it reflects that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So this again probably be your 400 on your lens and your
no. This was right over my shoulder. This is probably just like my 135.
Okay.
Because I was standing in the tunnel back there, shooting what was happening in front of me with the 400. So from where I was standing, this probably would have been way too close.
Okay.
For the 400. Nostrils.
Yeah.
Next one is what first of all,
Jesus.
the gymnast having that kind of form and precision to make his body shape like that and look like that from that angle is just, and then the shot itself, getting it. I imagine you're in burst mode, probably shooting 30, 40.
Everything's in burst mode.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
20,
chalk is just so cool.
Yeah. And that, this is the thing that I like about this one is this comes back to something that I harp on a lot: intention and watch your backgrounds. I intentionally saw this potential for this to line up where it would say Nebraska, and I just always liked the way the chalk comes off the hands in gymnastics, and I liked it in black and white.
So what kind of shutter speed would you be using to
well, that's inside Devaney, so I'm probably at 1250, maybe 1600th of a second max. Maybe. Yeah, that probably sounds about right. But yeah, I was probably, if I remember correctly, I was sitting on the floor with my camera also on the floor, using the little flip screen on the back
Okay.
to line it up to get this angle where I could get the Nebraska in the background right where I wanted it.
Nice.
Incredible shot. Absolutely. And to finish things up, sentimental one for me, for sure.
Yeah, it was sentimental for me too.
Number one, let me just ask, how did you get such a nice tight shot? Where were you sitting or set up? You were obviously probably not standing.
Well, when
right
they did this ceremony, did they do this after the first quarter or after the third quarter?
it would have been halftime.
Did they do this one at halftime?
Was
Yes,
it,
they
was this
did.
the ceremony for the locker room, or was it just
This
'cause
was
it was
the
halftime, they honored him.
whole brought Frank back.
Yeah, that was at halftime.
Yeah,
after
that
the
was
first
because that
game.
was a longer thing at halftime. Well, I had seen that John had positioned himself front and center from the whole like normal ceremony. So there's no point in me going and sitting right next to him. There, we don't need two people bringing back the exact same pictures. And
Right.
I had an idea of how he was going to do what he was going to do from that position. So I decided to just stay on Frank with the 400.
Okay.
I probably left the teleconverter on it too. I don't remember, but I decided to just stay on Frank
It's
because I was looking for something just like this,
the perfect
and the
expression.
rest of everybody else was irrelevant to me. And a little bit sentimental,
Mhm.
a little bit in my own feels about how things went down with Frank. This moment, in my estimation, was long overdue.
Mhm.
And I just kind of had a feeling that, Frank was going to feel a certain way about it.
Mhm.
And so I was just waiting for that moment. And there was a couple of them there. I was debated between this one, and there was one moment where he just smiled really big, like
Mhm.
Frank always did.
Yeah.
Right.
He just always had that smile that was bigger than
Yep.
life. And I was torn between the two, but I keep coming back to this one because I think when you stop and you just kind of really look into his eyes and the expression on his face, that he was in his feels about the moment.
No doubt about it. Absolutely.
Love it.
Speaking of Frank and seeing him on this, I got to see him. I can't remember I don't think I ever watched him coach a game as head coach. I don't think I was ever in Memorial Stadium to see him coach a game, but we did get to see him coach in the Independence Bowl when he was at Ohio. Scott and I were both there. They played ULM, University of Louisiana Monroe. It was the first year Nick Saban was the coach at Alabama, and Louisiana Monroe beat them. If you remember that, it was like 2007, I think it was. So we were
a hot
there.
minute ago.
And yeah, just a couple days ago. Yeah. And we're sitting, and Frank's kind of coming around. He's talking. It was like a commercial break or whatever. He's talking to the refs. They're kind of close to the sidelines. There's a few Nebraska fans around us wearing Nebraska gear, and somebody shouts out, "We love you, Frank. We think you got screwed." And he turns to the crowd and he just gives a quick smile, and he looks right over in our area and he just gives
Right.
a quick smile. And I was like, that was cool.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. That's just so Frank, turn, just give it a quick smile. Nothing huge to put his own
Right.
team off or anything, but it was just an acknowledgement.
An acknowledgement.
Cool.
Right.
That was pretty cool.
Yep.
So let's we're not the only ones that do this podcast thing. You do it as well, Eric. You've started, I can't remember, how many episodes in are you now? How long have you been doing the eye test?
I don't know. We started last fall.
Last fall. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how did it get started? What was the whole reasoning behind it? What had you thinking, hey, I'd kind of like to podcast?
Well, I've been thinking about the idea for quite a while. And some of the people over at Herd At, we've been bouncing ideas around, trying to come up with the right idea, the right format, I didn't want to do just another podcast,
Right.
just another Husker podcast, right? What am I going to do different?
What's your niche?
Right. And I thought there was something there to talk a little bit about photography and maybe the way that I approach things, the way that I see the game and how I see things happen, which is a little bit different from the way, like, for instance, some of our writers see it. Brandon is, I think I've told him before, I think he's like the best statistical analysis guy and working it into stories that I've ever known. He's great at it. But it's also the reason that I love having discussions with Brandon about the football team, the season, how things are going, because he's looking at it from those statistics. And I'm looking at it from more of a, lack of a better term, from more of an eye test, right? Did it look like football? Did it look like they knew what they're doing? Does it smell like football? Was the body language? How was the body language? Were they still competing? All of those things, those are the things that I notice all the time. And it's a little bit of a byproduct of who I am, but it's also largely a byproduct of the way I approach my job. I'm looking for body language because, I can't see what's in somebody's head in the moment, but I can certainly take a picture of your body language and get an idea of what might be in your head. And so those are the things that I'm always looking for. So that's why I like having those discussions. And while Brady and I were on the road a lot last year, spending a lot of time in hotel rooms together, we just kind of realized one night, as we had spent 2 hours talking about the football game that we had just covered, that I realized in the moment that, holy crap, if we had been recording this, it would have been a podcast. Why don't we just do this? And, I can work in some photography stuff and we can talk shop a little bit, because I think people also like a little bit of the behind the scenes and how we do our jobs.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, great, you got to go to Michigan. You got to go to the big house. Well, the travel and the Ubers and the Airbnbs and the Ubers and the stadium and the 12-hour day, and then the 3 hours of sleep before we catch a 7 a.m. flight to come back home. Everybody else sat down on their couch and watched a game for 3 hours, and it's a 2.5 day deal for us.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
we can talk a little bit of shop too, but so yeah, that's how the eye test came about.
Well, I know, Scott, did you have something? I'm sorry. I didn't even need to step on you. I know you've talked about it before on the show. There's another podcast concept, perhaps other content.
Working on another concept. I've noticed. I've started to analyze like the direction that I was taking with guests and questions and things that I was passionate about talking about in raising good young men, and how do we coach them, and how do we make them better. And I started to kind of feel like maybe that was taking over and distracting from our original concept for the eye test. So we're working on possibly carving that little niche out into its own little podcast, where we're gonna talk about, it's still a work in progress, but basically I'm thinking we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of modern masculinity and how do we build better young men for this world, and allowing them to be who they are, no matter how they, some guys are your quote unquote traditional, your stereotypical guy, and some are not. But everybody should get to be who they are, no matter what they are. But when we boil it down, I personally feel like this world, then the track we're going, without, I don't want to get into politics and all that, but this track we're on, that we really, really need good, strong young men for the future we're going into. And I think some of them are a little lost at the moment.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a great concept, and I'm already subscribed, even though it's not out yet. So as soon as you let me
Yes.
know that it's out, I will be subscribed, and it will be certainly in my rotation because I think you're absolutely right. I
Well,
think that
hopefully we
is
can
vital.
get it up, in the higher part of your rotation.
Yes.
I want to get lost in the 40s because I feel like
queue.
those probably never get listened to.
No, I test is always one of the first things I listen to as soon as it drops. There's other stuff that gets cycled down, but when I test drops it, that's one of the first things I listen to. So this will probably be the same thing. And Scott and I have been talking about a concept too of a different podcast that I've been talking about with a buddy of mine from church that I play golf with, and just take a recorder out with us, sit on a golf course under a tree after we've played a round of golf, smoke a cigar, talk about a little golf, and then just talk about a topic, just one,
Whatever.
something
Yeah.
about, hey, how do you deal with adversity? What is it that gets you through adversity? And then when the cigar's gone, we're done. And we shut it down. Just kind of a, I don't know. We've got kind of some weird names kind of going through our mind, something like staying the course, or, teeing off on life, teeing off on life or something. Just have some fun with it and it wouldn't be weekly. It'd probably be like once a month when we'd have time to.
That's the kind of one I think you can probably just do whenever you feel like doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be.
So,
if you're not doing it for the purpose of monetization,
nah.
and you're just doing it because you love it, then just do it whenever you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
No, I like that idea of your podcast because I think two things are true. That one, you did say that was true, which is I think that like you said, to avoid politics or anything, which is absurd that it can even be qualified or quantified as a political problem. But I think it's a reality problem, which is that, yes, there are young men in the world that feel completely lost because everything that they do is wrong.
Yes.
And,
or they've been told that everything they do is wrong.
Yes. Their intrinsic nature is wrong.
Yes.
And not to say that there, like you just said, not to say that there isn't exceptions to that rule, because there definitely are. I would be one of those people. I'm not your typical traditional type of guy, but I definitely have my inclinations towards doing those things. But then the other thing that you said that complements that is that dudes consume podcasts almost as regularly as an alcoholic consumes beer. There's a reason why the Joe Rogan podcast is such a hit, and there's a reason why podcasts in general are such a hit, is because that's the type of media that men in generally like to consume. They don't have all the time in the world to just sit and read articles and read books. And
I can do two things: that I can mow the lawn and listen to a podcast.
Exactly.
You can do yard work and listen to a podcast. I can work on 1,000 photos and listen to a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. My job, I do apartment maintenance, and in my truck, I'm listening to podcasts. And when the residents aren't there to have questions that need answered for whatever reason, and to just not be disrespectful, half the time I have a headphone in one of my ears and I'm listening to a podcast. I run out of podcasts to listen to because I'm just I'm an auditory learner. And I think a lot of men generally are, because men work trade jobs most of the time, and those jobs require a lot of verbal instruction. And so I think
men are probably a little more tactile learners as well.
Yes.
Like I have to be able to put my hands on it and do it to learn it. I personally have never been much on book learning.
No.
Like whenever I got a new camera, I would have it in my hand for 3 hours before I cracked the damn book.
Yep.
Right. I just open it up and start pressing buttons. What's this do? All right. What's this do?
Yep.
And then inevitably I open the book and go, oh man, that's really cool. I should be doing that. Because, it's whatever new feature there is. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a retired over the road truck driver, and that's all I did was 11 hours a day, 10, 11 hours a day. Was
my God, that's just
so I never had that long of a playlist.
Podcasting.
I never had that long of a playlist when I was driving, because I could listen to them all every day. And that's how this show started. Was I was in the sleeper of my truck. doing my end of the conversation, and he was in his apartment there in Lincoln. So
That's
God bless
awesome.
technology. Yeah.
That is
StreamYard.
awesome.
We could talk on StreamYard, but we didn't. We were audio our first year, audio only. So I'd
Right.
record my audio.
Our first season was all audio too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I was like, man, we should have just started with video from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely added a different element for sure.
Don't want to bite off too much, you know. That is the thing. It's like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
want to do everything all at once.
Jump out of the nest and learn how to fly on the way down.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
There
that,
you go.
I've done that a
There you
lot
go.
in my life. I can't say it always worked out, but
hey, sometimes falling is probably the best learning.
it's a great
tool.
motivator, isn't it?
It is. It's like, I don't want to do that again.
No doubt about it.
Nope, you will have a subscriber, my good sir. If you create that podcast as well, I will definitely subscribe and take a listen. So you have another guaranteed listener there, Bucko.
Well, good. We're up to 2.
We're up to 2.
There you go.
Absolutely. I believe you would have quite a few, to be honest with you. I think that's a good topic that a lot of people would listen to. Just in a sense that it's what the world needs, you know.
Yeah.
I think God's hand would be on it, to be honest with you. So let's see, you got to do a photo shoot not too long ago for the yearly
For the yearbook?
the Bible, if you will, Hail Varsity's
Yeah,
Bible.
the football preview.
Football
Yeah.
preview. Yeah. And you sent me this little video, and I'm just going to throw that out there for folks to watch. Sorry to all the podcast listeners right now. You're just going to hear the music, but it's good music. So
Hopefully they've
I had fun doing that. Like you, and I know you had fun with that photo shoot. I mean, a dude that really hasn't played a whole lot of football shows up with a goat shirt on.
Yeah,
That's
and
a ballsy move.
when I saw the shirt, I was like, all right, well, we're gonna go with that. That pretty much
The iced out chain.
because we kind of went into the shoot with a normally we have like some kind of a conceptual idea that to kind of steer the boat. We went into this one not knowing how much time we were going to have with them and all of that, kind of loosey goosey, and it was kind of, all right, Eric, go see what you can do. And so I went in completely open minded to just, I don't know, explore the light in the underneath the stadium there mostly, and just see what we could do. And he walks in with that shirt, and I went, all right, let's do it.
Let's go.
And it was a lot of fun. Gabe's a good guy.
Yeah,
A little more soft spoken, but you know, I just wanted to see if I could catch some of that intensity in his eyes, because I think he's had a not so smooth road, and I think I feel like he's ready for this season to be something different. So we'll see.
I have a technical question on one of the pictures, and that was the one where he's standing by the gate, I think it is, where you've got all that backlight behind him, and it shows one of the guys, fella there, long hair.
16-year-old son. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's your son? Okay. I was wondering. That was a reflector. Was that what he was
Yeah.
holding, to grab some of that light? Coming
Grab
in
some of
from
that
the
light and shoot it
outside,
back onto his
shoot it
face.
back onto him, so you could get him as well as
Yep.
it's the blown out background with the bright light. I thought that was kind of a cool effect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So now that you've had a little bit of time and you've seen kind of the way this new staff has operated a little since, the previous staff has left, what are your impressions, just kind of general, of Coach Rhule, his staff, and where perhaps they could be leading this team
Well,
next season?
I'll just say I'm no different than anybody else on the radio, on podcasts, writing stories. We're all just taking our impressions and giving our best guess. But I feel like the way I've described it before is I feel like over the last 15, 20 years, ever since they let Frank go, we've had a series of coaches who checked some of the boxes, but not all of the boxes. And we've as a fan base, I feel like we've assembled this list of, man, I'd like a coach to do this, and this, right? And some coaches clicked off a few things, but not everything, and came up short in some areas and excelled in others. And it was never anybody that like checked all the boxes. And I know me personally, I went into this coaching hire and I was just I'm tired of being burned.
Right.
I'm tired of jumping on the bandwagon and then being let down. I was like, nope. I was adamant. You're going to tell me, don't show me, or show me, don't tell me. Right. You're going to have to prove it to me now. But he came in and he just kept checking things off that list that in my head. Right. He's doing this, his organization, he's adult in the room. He's right. He's recruiting. He's this and he's out in front, and he's, by all accounts, he's the same person that we see as the public or media as he is behind the closed doors. And he just keeps checking all boxes. And then one day I just realized that, God damn it, I'm on the bandwagon again. But yeah, it feels different. Like the past several years when Scott got hired, and we would go to the couple practices that they would allow us into, it almost felt like they were forcing the excitement a little bit. Not just the coaching staff, but the players. Like they were kind of in fake it till you make it mode. And this is just one example, but when we got access to practice in the spring, I gravitated over towards the offensive and defensive lines because I think that's where the season is going to be determined.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to see how they were approaching things. And there wasn't team wide, and then on a micro level with just the line, there wasn't a lot of, like, I won't say unnecessary, but there wasn't a lot of extra hyping each other up. They were just working. Just working. They were just doing the work. Coaches coaching, players playing, working on getting better. And I like that. Especially in that position, right? You just work and you get better, and we'll let the play on the field decide whether we get to jump around and be excited. And we'll see. But I think, and maybe I'm being a little optimistic because I'm born and bred Nebraska. I want them to be good for lots of reasons. As a fan, as a media member that covers them, I want them to be good. But I think, everybody seems to be making 6-6 kind of the over-under number, right? 6 wins is kind of where everybody's setting the over-under.
Mhm.
Some at 5, some at 6. I think they could very easily be over 6. Just by coaching. And I alluded to that when we started this podcast tonight, when we started talking, that, just different, better, more involved, intentional coaching is going to account for a couple more wins.
Yeah.
Just that alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And making, the right decisions, don't onside the kick when you're done, when you're up. Little things like that. Right. I mean, but, we laugh at it, but,
Just
because I've seen
I mean,
some things lately where people are like, I've seen a couple of things where people are like saying they'll be lucky to win 4 games this year.
mhm.
And I struggle with that, because that's only if you believe the team the last couple of years, talent-wise, was only a 3 or 4 win team. I personally don't believe that the last 2 seasons that the talent on that team was only worthy of 3 or 4 wins.
No.
Both of those teams were easily worthy of bowl eligibility. Easily, talent-wise. Right? You just look at recruiting classes.
Mhm.
And they should have been at least that good. So, and there's been some change on the roster, but I don't think it's taken any huge steps back that's going to account for they'll be lucky to win 4 games. I just don't see it. I think they're going to be better than 6.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I think at least 6 is, in my mind. As you were talking, Eric, a thought crossed my mind. We used to see during the years that Frost and company were in town, they'd all wear those day-by-day shirts. The coaching staff. Every time you turn around, they had a day-by-day shirt on up at the podium, but they never got better and better.
That's because they wore the shirt, but I don't know
think
that they actually
practiced.
believed it now, or embodied what day by day actually means. Day by day means you're doing the work.
Yep.
Not just the players doing the work, but the coaches got to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's a top-down thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just got to put your head down, do today's work, and get 1% better. You get 1% better every day, you're golden.
Yep. So it all starts here in less than, what is it, 50 days now?
Yeah, I think we're right at about 50
We're right
days,
at
aren't
50. We? So yeah.
Sheesh.
I'm ready to hear the band and the fans and to hear even after 30 years, still the first tunnel walk of the season just kind of permeates my body.
Yep.
And you can't help but get excited, because I just love college football.
I do too. We're going to those first 2 home games, and then also going to Purdue for sure. Maybe more than that. We'll see. But yeah, my goodness, this has been a lot of fun. This has been great hearing your stories, all the things that you've seen as a photographer, literally, not even through the lens, but just in life. It's been very eye-opening for us and for me, for sure. But we need to know one more thing, just a little something about you that maybe you've never said on the eye test, or maybe somebody at Hale Varsity doesn't even know necessarily about you. Just a fun little quirky fact about yourself. This is our fun fact segment that sometimes isn't so much fun for people who aren't prepared for it. But I told you about it earlier today.
I know you did.
Come on now, Eric. Bring us a fun fact.
Let's see. Oh, that's what I thought of. I got a couple things.
Go for it.
Behind me here, if I don't lose my. It's got this bottle of dirt.
Okay.
From the last game at Rosenblatt Stadium.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
mom got me this little Rosenblatt Stadium thing that she found at a thrift shop somewhere.
Wow.
And I set that little bottle of dirt inside that, and I've moved it around with me every time I've moved since, because that's the dirt from the last game played at Rosenblatt that I was there for.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
And
Very,
then
cool.
I was going to say on a personal level, as a Husker fan, somebody growing up in this town, played football in this state. And since we were talking about Frank, my very first Frank Solich memory, personal memory of he was up at the high school I was playing at, recruiting, doing stop through, watching film with coach, recruiting a couple guys. And I had just happened to walk into the locker room as they were walking out of coach's office, and me and a couple of the guys, and he stopped and he mentioned my name and looked me in the eye and said, "Son, if you were 3 inches taller and 15 pounds heavier, I'd offer you right now."
Oh, wow. You played O-line or what?
Fullback.
Fullback. Oh, golly. You could have been one of those legendary fullbacks from back in the day.
Yeah. If mom and dad had given me 3 more inches, I could have found the 15 pounds.
Oh, yeah. I hear you.
If you'd give me another 3.5 inches, I probably would have just naturally had another 15 pounds.
I could hand you the 15 pounds because I found them in the last.
The 15 pounds would have been. I'm coach. I'll find the 15 pounds.
Yeah,
but I can't do anything about those 3.5 inches you want.
I'll wear some specialized cleats.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
some stilettos.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I wish I could.
That's always been that story that just like gets me to the heart. I could have been, coulda. If my genetic code had just given me another 3 or 4 inches.
Do you have any new fun facts, Scott?
I got new suspension put on my car. Finally, I had the suspension parts come in, like, I don't know, back in like February or March or something like that, and just put it off forever and ever and ever and ever, and got it on, dialed it in and everything. And so now my car sits a little bit lower and it's a way more comfortable ride.
Good.
No more clunking in the back of the car, which is great. But that's basically it. Yeah, car looks sweet now. I don't have this stupid gap between my wheels and the fender well. I hate that so much. I want it to be like right about there. That's what I want. I want good fitment. I like good fitment, and I like when I turn that the bolstering in my seat doesn't have to work as hard to keep me in the seat. So that's a fun fact about me. My car is more of a race car now. So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's see. For me, my golf game's worse. It's not really a fun fact, but it's more funny. But the YouTube rabbit hole I have decided is my mortal enemy. No matter what it is, whatever topic I decide to research, there's 85 different channels that suddenly show up, and I like them all. So I'm watching videos. I'm like, oh, this will help my game. Just this one little tip, and you'll be hitting the ball. Yeah.
50 tips later.
Yeah. I'm
right.
Now, I haven't shot less than 20 something over par at the par 3 course lately. When I used
because now you got too many things in your head.
Too many things in my head. So that's my fun fact.
You need to get back to stop thinking and just swing the club
and call it good. Because I have no swing anyway. It's all arms. There's really no body turn. It's just hope I hit it, kind of thing.
And just to adjust your expectations.
Yeah, I'm not good enough to get mad and swear. So, but I do anyway. I'm good at swearing. I've discovered that. That's another fun fact. But I think we all are if we've ever swung a club. Anyway, Eric, where can folks find you on the social medias, and how can they follow you?
I'm on oh my God, they all have different names. I tried to get them more unified names, but it didn't help at the time. I'm pretty easy to find on all of them. Pretty easy to find on Twitter. What is that? Or on that one? What is that one?
Eric Francis Picks.
Eric Francis Picks on
Yeah,
Twitter.
Mhm.
Eric's Picks on Instagram.
Yeah.
And Sports Shooter 402 on Instagram.
Okay. Yep.
You mentioned the eye test.
Mm-hmm. Any
And,
podcast app,
and you
you'll find
can
the
any of the
iTest app.
podcast apps, you can find
And
that
you're on
one.
YouTube too, right?
Yep, we started
Cool.
getting on YouTube, and I started a little bit of my own little side channel thing where I just talk a little bit more about photography and life. So
Sweet.
Very cool.
when I randomly have a thought, I just sit down and record some.
How about you, Scott?
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter and Twitter alone. I'm at ScottGenRedPod. That is Scott with 2 T's. The second T is and will always remain silent. You can follow me there. Still not active there yet. Once the season gets a little bit closer, I might get a little bit weirder. So, yep, give me a follow there and hang tight for a wild ride.
Absolutely. You can follow me and the show at GenRedPod on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or listen to the audio show on your favorite podcast app by subscribing to Generation Red. We post new shows within 24 hours after we live stream them, so this audio will be available. And don't forget to look down in the description of this video once it is on demand, and you'll find the link to vote for the Nebraska Podcast Awards. And that link will also be available to those of you who are listening to this show in audio. Anyway, for Eric Francis, he's Scott, I am Ken. Together we are Generation Red, here to remind you as often as we possibly can that there is absolutely no place like Nebraska.
And Iowa's corn sucks P-trap juice.
Yes, indeed. All right. Until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Oh, my.